Good evening, and welcome to Story Hour. I'm tonight's host, Laura Blackwell. My co-host, the marvelous Daniel Marcus, started Story Hour almost 4 years ago at the very beginning of the lockdowns. And here we are on the other side of the lockdowns. I personally would not call it the other side of the pandemic, but that's up for debate. And we've just been coming back every Wednesday because hearing people read stories to you is really a pretty awesome way to break up your week. I am pleased to tell you that for the second year in a row, we are supported by a SIFWA Givers Fund grant. Thank you very much, SIFWA, for helping us keep the Zoom going. We really appreciate it. And this is how Story Hour goes. It's Daniel is off tonight, so it's just me hosting, but I see that we have some of our favorites here already. Welcome back to those of you who are returning, and welcome to those of you who are here for the first time. As always, we have two wonderful writers reading their own work. Tonight's readers are Thomas Ha in his Story Hour debut, and Marie Brennan for coming back for the 5th time. Yes, we like her so much, she's been back more than once a year. I think it's a record. If you are here on Zoom, feel free to chime in on the text chat if you like. And if you are joining us on Facebook, feel free to leave messages, but don't expect us to see them right away. So we are going to be starting tonight with Thomas Ha. Thomas Ha is a former attorney turned stay-at-home father who enjoys writing speculative fiction during the rare moments when all of his kids are napping at the same time. Relatable. Thomas grew up in Honolulu and, after a decade plus of living in the Northeast, now resides in Los Angeles. Thomas, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here, and I'm glad I am paired with a Story Hour veteran like Marie. I'm the polar opposite. This is very much my first reading, so everyone's been warned. This might be a bumpy ride, but I will be reading Window Boy, which is a short story from the August 2023 issue of Clarkesworld magazine. And I guess before I get started, just some content warnings. This has some swearing, some of which is censored for story reasons, but some of which isn't. Violence, substance abuse, implied physical abuse, implied death, basically a light romp of a story. So yeah, let's get started. It's a little bit longer, so I'm going to dive right in. This is Window Boy. The 10th time Jakey broke the rules, he put a sandwich in the mailbox where the window boy could get it. Mom had taken her sleep-quick pills and gone to bed after dinner on account of her headaches, and Dad was dozing in front of the TV, chin on his chest, and a half-empty glass clutched in his hand. It got still enough that the only sounds were Dad's shows and the hum of the house filters, so Jakey slipped into the kitchen and put together a ham and cheddar on a plate, then placed it in the parcel chamber near the front door. He sat by the parlor window for a good long while after, curled up at the bench cushions, and his eyelids drooped now and again until he began to see the shadows move. The window boy showed up, just like all the other times, out from behind the telephone pole across the street and then through the moonlit front yard. He crawled on his hands and knees across the wet grass to the edge of Mom's miniature garden, careful to avoid the lawn sensors, then pulled himself to the window frame to peer through. Folks passed out? Yep. The window boy snickered. Got you something. In the mailbox. The window boy crawled through the garden and up the steps. He gave Jakey a wary look before touching the hatch. You can grab anything, in the outer chamber. It won't hurt you if you don't press the far side and try to bust through to where the incoming packages and stuff get pulled in. Jakey reassured him. So the window boy unlatched the outer seal, and Jakey barely saw the first half of the sandwich leave the chamber with how fast the window boy snapped it up, shivering while he ate. They'd never talked much about what went on outside, but the boy's bony wrists and hollow cheeks told Jakey enough. After a minute or two of chomping away, the window boy seemed to remember himself and that he was being watched. So he took a breath and straightened himself out. Thanks, Jakey. Don't mention it. Gonna miss this when they send you out. The window boy scratched behind his ear. They tell you where yet? Nah, they don't tell me anything. In truth, Mom and Dad had decided on Pacifica, one of the ocean schools, away from the cities, where all kids like Jakey with fathers like Dad went, and where Dad himself went years ago. But the window boy didn't know anything about that, which is why Jakey liked talking to him to begin with. So he wasn't about to get into it with him now. Burning season's wrapping up, the window boy scratched behind his ear. Can't smell much of the smoke tonight. Well, that's good. Nah, end of fire is when the animals get restless. Oh, the charred mountains, the ash water drives the old and the ugly right to the houses. Grackles, raccoon tails, war cats, you know. He looked up and around like he'd remembered to be watchful and pressed his chest low to the brick landing. Been meaning to talk to you about that, Jakey. What do you mean? Just that I've been meaning to ask something. Jakey's chest tightened. He'd been worried something like this might be coming. These weeks he'd spent talking to the window boy late at night, when he couldn't sleep and didn't want to think about Pacifica, he had the worries there in the back of his mind that the window boy was working up the courage for an ask. All those lessons, the speeches from Dad, were still buried there in Jakey somewhere. Not to give them things, no matter how small. Not to talk to them the way that Jakey had been doing. You think when they smile and wave, they want to be your friend? You think when they tap at the window or ring the doorbell, they just want a little favor? They hate you, Jakey. That's why we have rules about not talking, not sharing. Because to share is to show, and you don't ever show them what you got, Jakey. Understand? The window boy must have seen something of those fears in Jakey's eyes because he looked sheepish and turned away. Forget it. What? Nah, it's not your problem. I'll figure it out. Jakey bristled and felt hot in his cheeks. Well, now it feels like my problem. It reminded him of when Mom did things like this, when she'd stop before taking her sleep quicks and say something about Dad or the house, and hush, like there were secrets too juicy to share. You should either keep it locked in the whole way or get out with it. That was the way Jakey did it and would always do it as far as he was concerned. But before the window boy could speak, bright lights flashed on the street. Get behind something, Jakey hissed, watching the window boy trip and skitter to the nearby retaining wall, then ball up his body as best he could. It was the mailman pulling up, his truck flashing its beams. There was a loud clanging of equipment when he dropped out of the passenger side to the curb and sauntered up the brick pathway. He pulled open his face visor, and his eyelights shone in the dark like the little display parts on their microwave. Jakey, why you got that window turned on, kid? Fuck, son, the whole world can see you right now. A lot of filthy worms out tonight. Power down that screen. I will. Jakey tried not to look at the far side of the yard. Just couldn't sleep. Couldn't sleep? The mailman laughed. Sure as shit. Not going to if you look out here. Then he straightened up and cleared his throat, and there was a clicking sound from the wires weeping around his neck, like they might pop out from the parts of him that were still flesh if he didn't move a little more carefully. Your house filters are on, right? Jakey assured the mailman that, yes, his cursing was being negated in the house's audio. Good, good. The mailman produced a box from under his arm. Guessing this is some nice stuff for your daddy. He scanned the barcode with his glove. I tell you, if I could do things over, I'd have been an LLC man like him. They're shipping you to school soon, right? Jakey nodded. Well, better study hard while you're out there. Then maybe you'll join up with a company, like your daddy. Won't get stuck with the shitty outside work, you know? If I could afford a kid, I'd be telling him the same. Holy crap! Jakey froze. The mailman reached into the parcel chamber and pulled out the other half of the ham and cheese the window boy left behind. Really? This is so nice, kid. I mean, kind of dangerous if anyone else peeps this, but wow, really nice. Yeah, Jakey nodded. For you. The mailman had already started eating, grunting. Jakey wasn't sure the mailmen were supposed to have people food after all of their modifications, but it seemed to mostly go down, though the mailman gagged and heaved a couple of times. Meanwhile, the window boy didn't move an inch in the shadows, covering his ears and trying his best not to breathe too loudly. Fan-tastic. Wow. The mailman wiped his mouth and around the lights where his eyes used to be. Thanks kindly for that, Jakey. He swerved all of a sudden and drew his revolver. The gun's laser light beeped and danced across the retaining wall, then to the dark skies, then somewhere across the street. Don't you fucking come any closer, the mailman said. He fired a few warning shots, though the sound filters canceled them out. The cameras that generated the window internally for Jakey also wiped the barrel flash, so that it just looked like the gun shaking. The gun was shaking. Jakey thought he saw the slightest splatter of blood near the telephone pole, but if it had even been there, the cameras deleted that too. Jakey was tempted to touch the filter panel to the side of the bench. It would just take a little turn of the dial to see what was really going on. Who might be out there that the mailman was yelling at? Maybe it was something big, one of the animals, like the window boy had said, something strange and old, like one of the grackles from the mountains, flying down to visit after the fires and snatch people off the street, rip them up into the air when they weren't watching the trees, maybe throw them into the concrete so they'd have an easier time getting to the soft parts between the bones. Part of Jakey wanted to know, since he'd never really seen one with his own eyes. But part of him wasn't sure he really wanted to find out. He pulled his hand back from the dial. Shit, just nicked him. The mailman's glowing eyelights turned back to the house. Then, as if recalling the rest of his route for the night and what was likely waiting for him, he closed the visor shut again. I'm serious, bud. Turn off that window, okay? Jakey nodded and watched him saunter back, down the brick and into the truck, which rose on its clawed legs and proceeded down the street to the next delivery point. Minutes of quiet passed before Jakey dared to whisper out to the yard again. The window boy crept out to the garden, visibly shaken by the gunshots, and looked like he had trouble swallowing. You okay? Yeah, just loud, he replied, just loud. And something about the way the window boy said that made Jakey realize that the kid must have been a little younger than he thought. He said he didn't know his age, and there were times with what the window boy knew about the world outside that he felt older, a lot older, in a way that almost made Jakey jealous. But right now, the boy felt so young. Think I gotta go, Jakey. I'll see you around. Yeah, see you around. Thanks again for the meat, really. No problem. We're friends, right? Jakey nodded, but didn't answer. Yeah, the window boy spoke for him. Yeah, we're friends. Then he crawled away. Everyone was tired during the day. Mom wiped down the kitchen and listened to music on the house speakers. Dad took his video meetings from his office. Jakey sat in the living room with his lesson programs, learning about the city seasons, but he kept thinking about the window boy and what he wanted to ask. At dinner, Mom and Dad got on each other's nerves in their quiet way. Something about the house again, always something about that. Jakey couldn't follow the details, but they were talking about moving away from the city. Dad wouldn't hear it, no matter how many times Mom tried to ask. Because even though LLC managers did everything from their houses and didn't go in anymore, he thought it was important to show that he could go into the city if they needed it. Pack up and roll in whenever they wanted. Something about morale and tax codes and whatever else he was probably repeating from the people who managed the managers. Mom whispered into her wine glass that she hoped they called him in. And that pretty much ended things for the night. She took her pills and marched upstairs, and he collapsed in the living room with his drink, his hunched body lit by flashes from the television. And when it was still and mercifully quiet, Jakey went back to the parlor and sat on those cushions until it was time. The window boy crept out from the telephone pole across the street, then up to the garden, then the frame. And the first thing Jakey noticed were the bruises along the boy's jaw and a lump on his forehead. But he knew better than to ask. All the other times he asked the window boy what those were, that just soured things for the both of them. Sorry, I didn't have anything to make a sandwich with, and my folks were more riled than usual, so I didn't think I could mess around in the kitchen, Jakey said. Nah, it's okay. I wasn't expecting anything again. I know you weren't. The window boy scratched behind his ear, then looked up warily at the sky. It's getting not so good, so not sure how long I can stay. What do you mean? Jakey asked. The window boy crouched and spoke more softly than usual. Lots of things. Restless in the city. Even the mailmen aren't risking routes every night. So he stopped and cleared his throat. Is it true what they say about the houses being fake? What? That you're not in here. This box. The window boy gestured at the screen. Someone told me these are just shells now, that you're actually way down, under the dirt. Little chambers to bring mail down and up, but the rest is just for show, like this window. Just lights and colors to make it seem like you're up here with us. The cameras in front of the house captured the fear in the window boy, but Jakey also saw a glint of other feelings that he didn't quite like, and he heard in his ear his father's voice still. Don't ever show them what you got. That's silly, Jakey lied. Never seen anything like that. The window boy's face fell. Yeah, silly. He shook and scratched the back of his neck, and maybe it was Jakey's imagination, but there was a steeliness to the window boy now. But it got me thinking, he said. Oh? Remember how I said I was going to ask you something before? Yeah, the thing you said you'd figure out, Jakey answered. Maybe the stories about the houses were dumb, made up, but you've got soft soil here in your side yard, I noticed. Behind the fence, Jakey said. Right, the fence, the window boy nodded. I thought maybe if I had somewhere to dig down a little, I could sleep safely. Just a little hole, maybe a foot deep, and I could cover it with ply. It's safer that way with, he pointed up, everything. Uh-huh. Your folks won't even notice it in the side yard, and it'd only be a night, maybe two. Uh-huh. All you'd have to do is power down the fence so that I could swing over without getting fried. Then I could dig, and then I think I'm going soon after, Jakey. So you wouldn't even have to worry. I think a lot of us are getting out of the city. For real. Uh-huh. What do you think, Jakey? Only a day or two. and it'd just be me. Jakey didn't know why he felt so cold. He wasn't sure why the window boy asking him for this made him want to turn the window off and go to bed. But he did know that the way the boy was talking, and especially that last part, made him nauseous. Just you. Yeah. Imagining that, the window boy sleeping up there nearby, coming out to talk at night every so often, none of that seemed too bad at first. But Jakey couldn't let go of that cold feeling in his chest. He reached over to the parlor controls and twisted the filter settings down. And there they were, behind the window boy, about 5 or 6 grown men staring at the house. Their faces and clothes were painted with strange streaks of color, blocky shapes all over their cheeks and torsos, large yellow spots on different parts of their bodies. Whatever it was allowed them to fool the house cameras into deleting them with the filters. Maybe the house thought they were animals or machinery or something Jakey shouldn't see. It took all of Jakey's self-control not to jerk away from the screen. I gotta think about it, maybe. Oh, the window boy scratched. How long you need to think? Like a day? Sure, Jakey said, trying not to look at the painted faces behind the window boy. Maybe a day. The window boy's fear spread from his eyes, and it didn't seem rehearsed. It was unclear if it was still the animals or the men behind him that were more of the cause. It's really scary now, he said. I think I need to dig a hole tomorrow. Tomorrow? Yeah, Jakey. Do you think, can you turn the electricity off in the fence tomorrow? Jakey didn't know what to say, and he was afraid that anything but what the window boy and the others wanted to hear would start something. Yeah, I think tomorrow. Sure, tomorrow. That's great. A grin broke across the boy's face. Oh, Jakey, that's so great. Oh, the men behind him didn't change their expressions. You're a great friend, Jakey. Tomorrow, I'll see you then. See you. Jakey turned off the window. Mom noticed right away that he wasn't touching his lunch, so she sat at the kitchen table with him. They could hear Dad on some video meeting in the background, and every time he laughed, she rubbed her temples. School will be good for you, she said, assuming that's what was still troubling him. I know you're scared of something so different, but it'll be good out on the water. You'll see what's going on. Maybe get a better sense of what you think, and that's important. Learning other ways to think, Jakey. Don't get stuck going one way, the way some of us do. He didn't much understand, but he got the sense that she was still arguing with Dad, even though he wasn't here. You know, when I was your age, there was this picture book, when they still printed books. Can't remember the name, but it was about bugs in the forest, starting out as little eggs in the dirt. And at the start of the book, some of the baby bugs, especially the ones born closer to the top, got eaten by bigger things, scavengers, hounds, stuff like that. And the baby bugs, deeper down, they just kept growing, and they eventually went on to have adventures when they were big enough. I keep thinking about that book for some reason. She rubbed her temples and ignored the sounds from the other room. How, where the eggs were laid, what happened or didn't happen was just luck. No one's fault. God, what was the name of it? That book. I used to know, I swear. She kept talking that way over and over until she got bored and left him alone. Then later, after dinner was cleared and everyone went off, Jakey stood at the entrance to the parlor for a long while, staring at the closed window screen. He imagined the window boy crawling out from behind the telephone pole, followed by those men, advancing slowly across the grass. And the thought made him shaky, kept him from going to sit down at the bench cushions like he otherwise would have. So instead, he found himself wandering through other parts of the house, drawn over to the living room, following the sounds of the television. Grack attack! Bang, bang, bang! It was one of Dad's cartoons, a show from when he was Jakey's age that was still running all these years later. On the television, Jakey saw a mailman in a power suit, pointing at the sky, at a black shape, like a T, flying up in the air and cawing. That was usually as much as they dared to depict the grackles in shows like these. Anything more than those T shapes, and they tended to get complaints from families and local churches that the grackles were too frightening for kids. The mailman on the show was a lot cleaner and brighter than the real ones, still had all of his teeth, not a spot of rust or blood anywhere on his cartoon body. He lined up the laser sight from his whirring revolver and pulled the trigger. A blossoming fire lit up the sky, incinerating the T that used to be a grackle, and the mailman winked one of his glowing light eyes at the audience. Got him. Dad noticed Jakey in the dark at some point and waved for him to sit down, which he almost never did. So Jakey sank into the couch next to his father and listened to the man chuckle and squeal. This is a good one, Dad would say every couple of minutes. Oh, you're going to like this. Big scene coming up. Beak blasters, get going. Fling your cloth sides up top. We got him on the run. Bang, bang, bang. Dad's breathing grew heavier and his eyes watery. But it was kind of nice, Jakey thought, watching the mailman riding around the city, his armored truck bounding on its metal legs. It made Jakey think about the window screen again, but in less of a bad way. Like maybe all of it was kind of like this show, something to be watched, something to be seen, but that would go away on its own at the end. He didn't have to think about the window boy or the painted man or anything that might be outside the house. Just let it fade away like the black screen at the end of those episodes. If he didn't want to, he didn't have to think about anything at all, he realized, as he floated off to sleep. You've got to call the mail. More bodies. What a fucking mess. They must have been running away. House clocked a bunch of grackles in the neighborhood, huge ones. I've never seen them that big. These guys must not have known where else to go. Tried to scale the fence and got burned alive, probably? God damn it. Mail pickup has me on hold. Insurance says they'll cover part of the cost, but mail is supposed to waive the remainder? They should have been picking off grackles anyway. Where the hell were they? Not enough of them anymore, maybe. Jakey's gonna wake soon. Go to the office. Yeah. Fuck me. What a mess. Jesus. Jakey opened his eyes, but didn't want to talk to anyone yet. So he closed them again and tried his best to sleep through the words and the noise. Night and quiet moved in like they always did, and Jakey found himself at the parlor bench like before, staring out at the grass and the moonlight and the darkened street. He waited for a long time for something he knew wouldn't happen, for something he knew he'd never see. No one came to the house that night, or the night after, or the night after that. And when enough nights passed that Jakey understood there was nothing to wait for, he realized something he probably should have realized weeks and weeks earlier. He didn't want to be here anymore. Maybe tomorrow he'd tell his mom and dad that he was ready for Pacifica. He could even ask to take an earlier armored car to the shore before the school year began. One of the boats would ferry him out on the open water to the floating compound where he could meet other boys like him, with houses and parents like his, and see what it was like out there in that place. Mom and Dad wouldn't fight him going earlier, Jakey knew. They didn't really want to be here either, always using quiet ways of their own to get out too. Everybody had been right, it turned out, Jakey thought, about the importance of school and the rest, about taking things seriously and finding a way to join one of the companies, maybe becoming a manager to afford to come back and pick out a house just like this one. He thought he understood now why they did what they did, why he had to do what he had to do. Still, he wasn't quite sure he could stop watching the window just yet either, even if it was what they probably would have done. And he hesitated, but reached for the dial for the auditory and visual filters, and he turned them all the way down, so low that he started to see new outlines and colors coming into focus. Big shape across the street, right next to the telephone pole. The thing standing there was just as tall as the pole itself, Jakey realized, with thin legs that went up at least 20 feet in the shadows, a strange little body, and then a bent, beaked head turned to one side. The grackle's eye, like an unbroken yolk, peered through the screen and into Jakey, even though he was buried safely all the way down below. Its wings draped to the sidewalk, almost hiding the long arms and hands with fleshy fingers that wrapped around part of the telephone pole. And behind the grackle, in the light-polluted sky, thousands of other grackle bodies floated like T-shaped kites, black lines against the unnatural gray swirls from scattered fires that spread like patches across the city. Jakey raised his thumb and forefinger into the shape of a gun at the thing by the telephone pole and at all the things waiting out there. Bang, 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 he whispered, imagining a laser light dancing across the cement. But the grackle didn't move. Jakey thought it probably wouldn't, even long after he shut off the screen and walked away. It'd always be there, whether he was inside or out. There, always there, whether he watched the screen or not.
Hair on the back of my neck is standing up. Oh my gosh. I thought I knew that story just from eyeball reading it, but hearing you read it is much more intense. Oh my goodness. Oh, everybody, that was Thomas Ha. His first reading, he says. I'm a little skeptical, but that's what he says. Well, it is our way at Story Hour to take a moment between the stories to collect ourselves. I need that a little more than usual right now. So let's all just take a moment, take a deep breath, relax our shoulders, get ready for another story from another writer. All right. I am ready for more stories. I bet you are too. Our next reader tonight is Marie Brennan. Marie Brennan is a former anthropologist and folklorist who shamelessly leans on her academic fields for inspiration. She recently misapplied her professor's hard work to The Market of 100 Fortunes and the short novel Driftwood. She is the author of the Hugo Award-nominated Victorian adventure series, The Memoirs of Lady Trent, along with several other series, over 80 short stories, several poems, and the New World series of world-building guides. As half of M.A. Carrick, she has written the epic Rook and Rose trilogy, beginning with The Mask of Mirrors. For more information and social media, visit linktree/swan_tower. Marie, welcome back.
It is good to be back. I'm glad you're not tired of me.
Never. It's great to have you here.
All right, the story I'm going to read likewise comes with content warnings for violence toward and death of children, which I swear makes it sound more horrible than it really is, but also the content warning is real. So if that's something that people listening to this are not really game for, then this might be one that you want to give a pass. It is a story that I published in Strange Horizons called This Is How. This is how a Valravn is made. A child dies. Lost in the woods, he curls up at the base of an ancient oak and never rises again. Or she falters in the snow, lying down for a moment by the side of the road, just a moment to rest her eyes. Or, starving and alone, he weeps for someone to help him, but no one does. A raven comes, pecking, tearing, red blood on a black beak. Not eyes as some tales would have it, but the cold red blood of the child's heart, chilled and stopped by death. A child falls. A raven feeds. A Valravn flies away. This is how a Valravn dies. A noble warrior faces the ravenous foe. Bright steel against dark, bright armor against dark, and if he is quick enough and strong enough, he cuts the creature down. Where once a malevolent raven knight stood, there lies now the body of a bird, wings spread wide and still. Or a woman catches a black-winged bird and pierces its breast with a pin of purest gold. The beak that once feasted on a child's corpse opens in a silent cry. The heart that beat with a child's blood stutters once and stops. Or, in a frozen wood, a man kneels before the Raven Knight. He neither pleads for his life, nor fights to end the one that threatens his. A flash of shadow, a spatter of blood across the snow, and the man falls. It will be a long time before the Valravn realizes that he, too, died that day. This is how a Valravn weakens. In small ways at first. Blood tastes less sweet. Pleas for mercy rings slightly out of tune. When he takes human form, his skin itches as if something is crawling beneath it. When he takes raven form, it feels wrong. A Valravn does not sleep. But when he sits alone as human knight or scavenger bird, watching the stars and the moon and the blood-stained sunset, his mind is disturbed. The silence within is filled with murmurs he cannot quite make out. A Valravn is not a person to be troubled by hopes or fears or memories of the past. Yet he remembers, first in flashes, then in long, uneasy reveries from which he wakes with the sense that someone was speaking to him, but he cannot remember what the voice said. In place of silence, there is noise. In place of purity, there is doubt. In place of the Valravn, there is a creature that has begun to feel. This is how a Valravn falters. He lets someone go. A child, a girl running along a path between two fields, hurrying home before night falls. The Raven Knight lands before her, a winged black shape plummeting into a tall figure of black steel, and she drops the bundle of firewood she is carrying. She doesn't shriek, this one, though her moon-wide eyes say she recognizes what he is. If she runs, he will chase her, cut her down where she flees, and drink her heart's blood on the banks of the nearby stream. If she does not run, he will cut her down where she stands and drink her heart's blood here between two fields. Except he doesn't. She stands there, shivering, and he raises his blade and he does not strike. They stand there until the sun sets and the stars come out, until the waning sickle of the moon rises as if to reap what the Valravn will not. By the end of the night, she is swaying and exhausted, and when she closes her eyes for a too long blink, he is gone, black feathers vanishing into the darkness before dawn. She picks up her bundle with shaking hands and staggers the rest of the way home. This is how a Valravn fights. With claws and beak, with a sword of dark steel, and with all the malice of his corrupted heart. Claws and beak and sword are no use against the voice inside his head, the voice of the man he killed. Not the first, nor the last, but this one was different, was and is. They all live on within the Valravn, the spirits of those he's slain. Like a fox with her tails, they mark him as old and worthy of fear. No tail, though, has ever given a fox such trouble. This one, he thinks, was a mistake. I am sorry. The man's final words on his knees in the snow. Odd words for someone about to die. But he said them with such sincerity. That sincerity rings through the Valravn's hollow bones, an echo that will not let him rest. Sorrow has leached the savor from the blood of his prey. Compassion has formed an uncomfortable harmony with their pleas. 3 words froze him on the path between the fields. I am sorry, as if he would apologize to the girl before he killed her. Not his words, the words of the man he slew. A good man filled with charity and mercy, temperance and kindness, who even in death refuses to be silent. The solution is easy. Release that soul, and the Valravn will be at peace once more. But there is cruelty in the cold heart's blood of a child who died lost and alone. It is the cruelty of nature twisted to her harshest face, and it is what transforms an ordinary raven to a raven of the slain. A cat may let her prey run for a time before she catches it again, but not a Valravn. He keeps what he kills, and will not let the man's soul go. The next time he finds a child, he leaves the body in pieces, scattered across the daisies of the meadow. This is how a Valravn breaks. In horror, in anguish, in grief. He gathers up the scattered pieces from the stained carpet of daisies as if he can stitch them back together again. But the force that transformed him gave him armor and a sword, not a needle and thread. He can kill, but he cannot heal. He remembers healing. He remembers gentle hands, cool water, and a soft cloth to wipe the blood away. He remembers tearing a loaf of bread in two and pressing one half into shaking, weakened hands. He remembers giving the other half away later, to a mother with an infant, and sleeping that night with his belly cold but his heart warm. He remembers life instead of death, soft voices instead of screams, eyes wide with gratitude instead of fear. But he also remembers killing, again and again without mercy. Many, many deaths, but not too many to count, because their souls live on within him. He relives those moments in pitiless detail, the good man's soul grieving for each and every one. What breaks him is the kindness, the compassion, the boundless heart that has room within it even for him. A creature born of death and abandonment, nature's heartless acts, should be beyond mercy. That is not what a Valravn is for. I am sorry. The man knew what a Valravn was, long before the black-armored knight stood before him. And when he met one, that man grieved for the child who had died, for the raven who had unwittingly drunk the cold heart's blood, for what they had become. That soul is there, too, buried beneath the rest. The weight is too great for the Valravn to bear. He curls up in his human form and screams. He cannot endure this shape, so much like the people he has killed. In raven form, he huddles into himself, head beneath one wing, pecking desperately at his own breast as if his beak were a pin of gold. If there were a brave knight present, he would spread his arms and welcome the shining blade. There is no knight. There is only himself, and the soul of the good man, and all those the Valravn has killed. This is how a Valravn changes. One by one, he lets them go. The souls drift upward like motes of light, but before that they tear free of him like his own bones coming out. Young and old, male and female, brave and angry and screaming in terror. They do not forgive him even when he lets them go. They curse him as they depart. And the pain goes on and on, always more bones to rip out, more sins to remember. The snow around him turns red with blood, a stain becoming a carpet, becoming a great frozen pool stretching outward through the wood. Soul after soul after soul, until only 2 remain. Then he stops. This is how a Valravn fears. Never once in all his existence. From the moment he lifts his beak, gleaming with a child's heart's blood, fear never touches him. He sees it, feeds on it, relishes its delicate taste, but never lets it strike him. Until now, when he hovers on the brink. 2 paths lie before him, and both, he fears, lead to damnation. Release the child and die at last, completing the death that began when he slew the good man. But that man's soul will die with him. Or release the man and return to what he was when he began, a dead child's soul in the body of a raven, but the warmth within him will be gone. And without that warmth, what is he but a Valravn? A killer without mercy, a creature that knows no kindness. He may remember what he has done, but the spark that began it will have flickered out, and the ashes it leaves behind cannot burn. He will begin again, repeating all his sins of before, and the thought of that terrifies him. Or a third path, stay as he is. But the fire burns too hot for that. He wants to release the two souls that remain. He knows now what goodness is, and cannot reach that star while he holds two innocents trapped. Without them, though, without one or the other, the good man is silent. He has wisdom, but no answers. There are no tales of a choice like this. The child, the man, neither. Death, damnation, suffering. A choice. This is how a Valravn chooses. He lets the good man go. This is how a Valravn is remade. In mercy, in justice, in repentance. The soul of the good man flies free, and there is no pain as it goes. The raven is left alone with the soul of the child who died alone, but not like it was before. Where there used to be a raven, where there used to be a dark-armored knight, a child stands in the snow. He looks at his hands in wonder, then touches one to his breast where a beak once pierced and tore. The skin there is soft and unmarked, and it is warm. Take fire from fire, and fire remains behind. It will continue to burn so long as it has fuel, the desire to do good instead of ill, to make amends for the sins of the past. He has freed the souls he wronged, and the one that remains is no victim of his. What killed that child, what kills all such children, is something else. Perhaps, he thinks, he can help change that. The air rustles and black wings spread, but this time their feathers are tipped with gold. A child rises, a raven repents, a Goldravn flies away. The end. I'm glad to get the comments. Laura, I gotta say, you say the kids are having a rough time of it tonight. That's your fault, because you told me what Thomas's story was like, and I said, oh, I have one that can go with that.
That's true. Well, I wasn't actually complaining. I was just making an observation. No actual children were hurt in the making of this story hour. Only fictional. And then Cliff pointed out that they also both have really scary birds,
Mhm.
which is also true. Although
Yep.
did you plan that too?
That part I didn't plan. That's an accident here.
What a happy accident.
As opposed to the time that I read, and there was just the wild tonal disconnect between what I read and what the other guy read.
That, I still point to that one. It was maybe the first or second time Marie read. She read, a nice solid fantasy story. I don't remember specifically which one it was. And the other reader warned me ahead of time that his story was a little rough. And he was really like, you should know. And I'm like, great, that's fine. That's no problem. And I didn't read it ahead of time because I often don't. I like to know, to experience them for the first time. We work with writers we trust, and I trust them to always bring something appropriate. And he did warn me. And it turned out to be about a boxer who comes back from the dead every Friday night in someone else's body to attempt to beat his rival to death before his rival beats him to death again. And it was an amazing story. It was Gordon B. White's story. I think the title is Friday Night Fight at the Dirtbag Casino.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is smart and heartbreaking and sometimes really funny in a way that makes you feel really uncomfortable for laughing. Really moving, great story, but just intense. And so we don't we still don't completely screen stories from authors we know, but we do try to sort of dedicate the scarier, the horror nights separately so that we don't have quite that. Because you're such a pro, but your eyebrows got higher and higher and higher.
I just have to say I realized it because I was glancing to see if I could figure out what it was I read in pairing with that, and I think I owe your audience an apology because you had sent me a list of what I read before, and this is how it was on that list, which I failed to notice. So I have actually read this story at Story Hour before.
And either I wasn't there or I was running tech and didn't notice.
Yeah, so I apologize to people who have heard that before. I think it's still paired very well with the Window
It
Boy,
was
but
perfect. It was
That's fine.
perfect.
Yeah, Killer Bird Night. It was
yeah,
just right.
Yeah, that
Killer
was,
Bird and bad things happening to children.
yeah. But we did end on an up note,
Yeah,
which is almost hard to believe considering the beginning of that story. And
that's why
considering what
I
Thomas
have
read.
more people like literally dead kid in sentence number 2, but it's a happy story ultimately, or hopeful,
Yeah, yeah. It
Somehow
turns
there's
around. It turns it around, yeah. Window Boy, whew, that story does a number on me every time.
I do have to agree with what you said that Thomas, your handling of the like sort of dashed out profanity that actually worked very well for audio, which can be difficult. Some things that work great on the page are actually not good in audio. I think that worked very nicely.
Yeah, I was impressed. And for a first reading too, I
Yeah.
think a lot of people just wouldn't have chanced it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. The other option was trying to bleep out the sounds with one of my kids' toy giraffes, which my wife talked me out of. She said, "Nah, it's too cartoony. Don't do it. Just, just hold back."
I that would have been a hell of a choice, and in a way it might have added to the horror in the long term, but I think that it was you went the right route.
Yeah,
That's
but
what I say. That's what I say. Could have been more
at,
horrific.
at some point though, if you do want to have a story where you do that with the giraffe, that would be great reading. I would love
I
it.
think I swear that I've been to a reading where somebody, it was a more like comic story, though admittedly one that had like a darker edge, but it was the dark edge underneath comedy as opposed to underneath, nope, this isn't fearful. And in fact had a little like squeaky toy that just kept on every time there was profanity. Uh, so yeah, it can work, but you need the right story for it.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I'll road test that one at an open mic and we'll see. Maybe next time. I'll bring it
Yeah.
back.
I look forward to it. Boy, what an evening of stories. Thank you both so much. Uh,
Thank you for organizing this. And 4 years, 4 years.
almost 4 years, yes. And we're not done. There
Yeah,
are still writers we haven't had on. There are people we keep wanting to have back.
yeah,
Keep doing this just forever.
yeah.
It's fun. High point of my week, very often. Ah, and
Well, I'm rooting for you to reach the point where you have to update your website to Story Hour 2030.
well, I wonder. I think that Daniel did try to get Story Hour and it was taken or too
Yeah,
expensive. And Story Hour 2020 was just what he
yeah.
upon. But I actually kind of like it.
Mhm.
2020 has the vision
Yeah.
connotation as well. And I don't know, it just sort of now that it's been 4 years, it seems kind of special.
Yeah.
But
Yes, no, I agree with what Cliff just said. It is a marker of like, why did it get rolling? Which I think is useful. Though the
indeed.
vision comment is funny to me when all four of us appearing on camera right now are wearing glasses.
Well, I mean, come on, we're writers.
Yeah,
This is the uniform.
yeah. 2020 is a long way in my rearview mirror.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it was a surreal time. But Story Hour was definitely the bright spot of many of those weeks in 2020 and 2021. 2022 looked up a bit. So at any rate, we're going to be here again next week, or at least I will. Next week's readers are Corey Fahrenkopf and M. Shaw. And I do recommend checking storyhour2020.com the day of, because if there are any changes, we will list them there. And it's also a good place to check out the calendar and see who's coming up next. And you can watch any programs you've missed. Watch this one just as many times as you want over on Facebook. Marie Brennan, Thomas Ha, thank you both so much for reading for us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to my co-host, Daniel Marcus, who is always with us, even when he's not physically right there. And thank you to all of you who are here listening now, and all of you who are going to be listening at some point in the future, because as long as you're here watching the stories, we're all here in the same story hour. Good night.